The text came through at 2:47 p.m. on a Thursday, and the moment I saw it, my entire world tilted sideways. We are leaving for Paris with your sister's family. We emptied the joint account, haha. Rolling on the floor laughing, faced with tears of joy. I stared at my phone screen like it might suddenly sprout legs and run away. The words didn't change. The laughing emojis didn't disappear. My mother, Marion Frost, the woman who raised me, who claimed family meant everything, had just announced they'd stolen from me like it was the punchline to a joke only they understood. My hands didn't shake. That's what surprised me most. Years of being the invisible son, the reliable ATM, the background character in my own family story had taught me to swallow anger like bitter medicine. But this was different. I sat in my downtown apartment, the one I'd bought without their help, in the leather chair I'd saved 3 months to afford, and I felt something cold settle into my chest. Not rage, not even hurt, just a crystalline clarity that cut through every excuse I'd ever made for them. Good luck. I typed back, adding an angry emoji that felt pathetic even as I hit send. They thought I was powerless. They thought I'd roll over like always, make excuses, tell myself it was just family being family. They thought wrong. Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. Let me take you back 6 months before that text because you need to understand how deep this betrayal cut. I'd been the family workhorse since I was 23, now 31. I'd spent 8 years funding their lifestyle while they treated me like the help. Every mortgage payment when Dad's business ventures collapsed. Every credit card bill when Mom's shopping sprees got out of hand. Every loan for my sister Celeste's dream wedding, her husband's failed restaurant, their kids' private school tuition. And what did I get? Dismissive comments at holiday dinners. Forgotten birthdays. My name misspelled on Christmas cards. Once, at Thanksgiving, my father introduced me to his golf buddies as the one who works in computers or something. I was a senior financial analyst at a Fortune 500 company. But I kept giving because that's what good sons do, right? That's what family means. The joint account had been my mother's idea 3 years ago. It'll make things easier, honey. She'd cooed over brunch, her French manicure tapping against her mimosa glass. For emergencies. For family expenses. We're all in this together. I should have known better. I did know better. But some stupid, desperate part of me hoped that maybe, just maybe, treating them like partners would make them see me as more than a wallet with legs. Now, sitting in my apartment with that mocking text burning into my retinas, I realized my mistake wasn't trusting them. It was underestimating how little they valued me. They'd looked at our joint account, the one with $63,000 I'd carefully saved over years of sacrifice, and saw a free vacation fund. They'd looked at me and saw a sucker. My phone buzzed again. A photo this time. My parents and sister at the airport, champagne glasses raised, faces split with laughter. The caption read, "Paris won't know what hit it. Thanks for being such a team player, little brother." Clinking glasses airplane. That's when something inside me snapped. Not loudly. Not dramatically. More like a switch flipping in a dark room, suddenly illuminating every corner I'd been too afraid to examine. I opened my laptop and pulled up the files I'd been building for months. Call it paranoia or preparation, but I'd sensed this day coming. Every legal document. Every contingency plan. Every trap I'd carefully laid in case my family finally pushed too far. They were about to learn an expensive lesson. The quiet ones aren't weak. We're just waiting for the right moment to stop playing nice. What would you do if your own family stole from you and laughed about it? Drop your thoughts in the comments because this story is just getting started, and trust me, what happens next will leave you speechless. 5 years ago, I was standing in my childhood kitchen at midnight, calculator in one hand, past due notices spread across the counter like a bad poker hand. My father sat at the table behind me, silent, while my mother paced near the window, wringing her hands. "We just need 20,000, Dad had said earlier that evening, his voice stripped of its usual bravado. The business hit a rough patch. Temporary. You know how these things go. I didn't know how these things went. I was 26, working 80-hour weeks at my first real job, living in a studio apartment where the shower leaked and the heater only worked on Tuesdays. But I knew what happened if I said no. The guilt, the disappointment, the subtle comments at family gatherings about how some children abandon their parents when times get tough. So I said yes. I always said yes. That 20,000 became 30 when the temporary, rough patch stretched into months. Then 50 when Mom's car broke down and she absolutely needed a newer model. Used wouldn't do. What would the neighbors think? Then another 15 when Celeste's wedding florist demanded payment up front. I worked doubles. I skipped meals. I wore the same 3 suits to work until the cuffs frayed. Meanwhile, my parents upgraded their cable package, and my sister posted Instagram stories from weekend wine tastings in Napa. The pattern was so gradual, I barely noticed I was drowning. Like a frog in slowly boiling water, they said. Except I wasn't a frog. I was their son, and they were supposed to love me more than they loved my money. Christmas 3 years ago was when I realized how invisible I'd become. We gathered at my parents' house, the one I'd helped save from foreclosure twice. Celeste and her husband arrived late, arms loaded with expensive gifts wrapped in designer paper. Mom fawned over every present, squealing with delight. When she got to mine, a cashmere scarf I'd spent 2 weeks researching, she smiled politely, said, "How thoughtful," and set it aside. Later, I found it in the coat closet, still wrapped, buried under winter jackets. But Celeste's gift, a luxury candle set that probably cost half what I'd spent, sat on the mantel like a trophy. "My daughter knows me so well," Mom announced to visiting relatives. I left early that night, claiming work emails. Nobody tried to stop me. The joint account came next year. "We're family," Mom had insisted over that brunch, her eyes wide and pleading. "We should share resources. Support each other." Support. That word tasted like ashes now. I'd funded Dad's failed cryptocurrency venture. Mom's investment in a friend's boutique that closed within months. Celeste's husband's restaurant that never got past the renovation phase. Every failure got absorbed into my bank account while they moved on to the next dream, the next scheme, the next expense. And through it all, I smiled. I nodded. I transferred funds. Because that's what kept me in the family, even if my place in it was basically a human ATM with a pulse. The breaking point should have come earlier. Maybe when Dad borrowed my car and returned it with a dent he never mentioned. Or when Mom gave Celeste my grandmother's ring, the one Grandma specifically left to me, because Celeste would appreciate it more. Or when they planned a family vacation to the Bahamas and genuinely seemed surprised when I asked if I was invited. But I kept quiet, kept giving, kept hoping that eventually they'd see me. Really see me. Not as a resource to be tapped, but as a person who mattered. Now, staring at that mocking text message about Paris, I understood the truth with painful clarity. They saw me exactly as I'd trained them to see me. A solution to their problems. A safety net for their recklessness. A joke they could laugh about over champagne they bought with my money. The invisible son who would always forgive them. Except this time I wouldn't. This time, they'd pushed past forgiveness into something colder, harder, and infinitely more permanent. This time, I had plans they couldn't imagine, consequences they never saw coming, and patience they'd mistaken for weakness. Do you think family should get a free pass to treat you badly just because they're blood? Comment below, because what Lucian does next will change everything. 3 months before that Paris text, I sat across from Dorian Hale in his law office that smelled like leather and old money. Dorian was the kind of lawyer who wore suits that cost more than most people's monthly rent and smiled like a shark who just spotted blood in the water. "You want to do what?" he asked, leaning back in his chair, fingers steepled under his chin. "Protect myself," I said simply. "From my family." I laid out the situation, the joint account, the history of loans that never got repaid, the casual way they treated my money like a community resource. Dorian listened without interrupting, his expression shifting from curious to calculating. "Legally, joint accounts are tricky," he said when I finished. "They have as much right to the money as you do. But," he paused, and that shark smile returned, "there are ways to create safeguards." Tripwires. Things that won't prevent access, but will certainly complicate it if they cross certain lines. Over the next 6 weeks, we built my defense system piece by piece. Alert protocols that would notify me instantly of any withdrawal over $500. Backup authentication requirements I could activate remotely. Legal documentation proving the source of funds, every deposit traced back to my accounts, my paychecks, my savings. We even set up automatic fraud alerts that would trigger if the account showed unusual activity patterns. The beauty of this, Dorian explained during one session, is that it's all perfectly legal. You're not restricting their access, you're protecting your assets. If they use the account responsibly, nothing happens. But if they try to drain it, he let the sentence hang, pregnant with possibility. I also transferred the bulk of my actual savings to accounts in my name only. The joint account became a honeypot, $63,000, enough to be tempting but not enough to destroy me. Bait for a trap I desperately hoped I'd never need to spring. You really think they'll do this? Dorian asked during our final planning session. I thought about Christmas presents left in closets. Birthday calls that never came. The way my mother introduced Celeste as my daughter, but me as just Lucian. The casual cruelty of being forgotten at my own family's table. Yeah, I said quietly. I really do. Dorian nodded, sliding a folder across his desk. Then you're ready. The moment they make a move, you make yours. All the protocols are set. You just need to activate them. I left his office feeling strange. Not relieved exactly, but prepared. Like a soldier checking ammunition before a battle he knows is coming but can't quite believe will actually happen. The waiting was the worst part. Weeks passed. Family dinners continued with their usual undercurrent of dismissal. Mom called when she needed something, never just to talk. Dad emailed occasionally, always with his hand out for one thing or another. Celeste sent memes and borrowed money in the same breath. And I played along, all while knowing the trap was set, the pieces in place, the trigger ready. I felt like a spider in the center of a web, patient and still, waiting for prey too arrogant to see the danger. Then came the text about Paris, and everything I'd built activated like dominoes falling in perfect sequence. I pulled up my laptop and opened the secure portal Dorian had created. Every account, every alert, every legal mechanism sat waiting for my command. My finger hovered over the keyboard for maybe 3 seconds of wondering if I was overreacting, if this was too far, if family deserved another chance. Then I remembered Mom's laughing emojis. Celeste's mocking caption. The champagne they were drinking with money I'd earned through sleepless nights and sacrificed weekends. I clicked Activate All Protocols. The screen flashed confirmation. And just like that, the trap sprung shut. Imagine planning your revenge so carefully that your family never sees it coming. That's exactly what happens next, and trust me, it's about to get intense. My parents' flight to Paris left at 6:15 p.m. I tracked it on my phone like a general watching enemy movements, seeing their little airplane icon crawl across the Atlantic. 8 hours of them celebrating their cleverness, toasting their audacity, probably composing more mocking texts they'd send once they landed. I spent those 8 hours drinking coffee and watching my security feeds light up like a Christmas tree. Every system I'd put in place was purring along perfectly, waiting for them to make their first mistake. They landed at 10:23 a.m. Paris time. By 11 o'clock, my phone started buzzing with notifications. Transaction denied. Withdrawal blocked. Access restricted. Each alert sent a small thrill through my chest. Not quite satisfaction yet, but anticipation of it. The first actual message came at 11:47 a.m. from Celeste. Hey, your card isn't working at the hotel. Can you call the bank? Your card. Like I was somehow responsible for fixing their theft. I ignored it. 3 more messages followed in the next hour, each progressively less friendly. Then Mom called. I let it go to voicemail. She called again. Voicemail. By the 5th call, I could practically hear her confusion turning to panic through the screen. Finally, a text from Dad. Lucian, we're having issues with the account. The hotel is threatening to cancel our reservation. Call me immediately. I replied simply, having a great day here. Hope Paris is lovely. The passive aggression must have driven him crazy because my phone practically exploded with calls after that.
Mom.
Dad.
Celeste.
Even Celeste's husband, who I'd spoken to maybe twice in my life. All going straight to voicemail, all building this beautiful symphony of consequences. Around 2 p.m. my time, Celeste sent a voice message. I almost didn't listen, but curiosity won. Lucian, what the hell is going on? Her voice was shrill, stripped of its usual condescending sweetness. We can't access any money. The ATM won't work. Our credit cards are declining. Mom is crying in the hotel lobby, and they're about to kick us out. This isn't funny anymore. Call us back right now. Wasn't funny anymore. Like it had been funny when they emptied the account. Like their mockery was hilarious, but consequences were unfair. I texted back. Sounds stressful. Maybe try the bank. What they didn't know, what they couldn't know, was that every attempt they made to access funds triggered additional security protocols. Each declined transaction generated reports. Each failed withdrawal created documentation. They were digging themselves deeper with every swipe of a card, every frustrated call to customer service. By evening Paris time, the messages shifted from angry to desperate. Mom sent a long text about how they'd made a mistake, how they'd meant to ask permission, how surely I understood it was just family helping family. The hypocrisy was so thick I could have cut it with a knife. Celeste tried guilt. Your nephew is crying because we can't take him to Disneyland Paris like we promised. You're ruining a child's vacation over money. What kind of uncle are you? The kind whose family stole from him and laughed about it, I thought.
But I didn't respond.
Silence was my weapon now, sharper than any words. Dad's message came last, around midnight my time.
Short.
Clipped. The tone of a man finally understanding he'd miscalculated badly. We need to talk. This has gone far enough. I stared at those words for a long time. Gone far enough. Not when they took my money. Not when they mocked me. Not when they built an entire Paris vacation on theft. Only now, when they were facing consequences, had things gone far enough. I typed one word. No. Then I turned off my phone and went to bed, sleeping better than I had in years. Have you ever watched someone realize they messed with the wrong person? Keep watching because this family is about to learn an even harder lesson. Morning came with 47 unread messages and 12 voicemails I had zero intention of checking. I made breakfast, eggs, toast, coffee like it was any normal Saturday. The sun streamed through my windows. Birds chirped outside. Somewhere across an ocean, my family was imploding, and I felt nothing but calm. The real move happened at 9 a.m. when I activated Phase 2. If the account freezes were the warning shot, this was the artillery barrage. I logged into the secure portal and initiated the legal notifications Dorian had prepared months ago. Automated emails went out to every financial institution connected to the joint account. Fraud alerts, unauthorized access reports, formal documentation that the primary account holder, me, had not authorized the withdrawal and was pursuing legal remedies. Each email was professionally worded, backed by documentation, impossible to ignore. The bank's fraud department would be calling my parents within hours. Credit bureaus would be flagged. Every financial thread they'd pulled would start unraveling in their hands. My phone rang, Mom's number. I answered this time, putting it on speaker while I washed dishes. Lucian. Her voice was ragged, desperate. Thank God. Listen, honey, there's been a terrible misunderstanding. No misunderstanding, I said calmly, scrubbing a plate. You took money without permission. That's called theft. It's a joint account. We had every right. Check with your lawyer about that. I set the plate in the drying rack. Oh, wait, you'll need money for a lawyer. That's unfortunate. Don't you dare speak to your mother that way. The desperation cracked into anger. We raised you. We fed you. We gave you everything, and this is how you repay us. The audacity actually made me laugh. You gave me everything? Mom, I've given you over $200,000 in the last 5 years. I paid your mortgage, your car, your credit cards, Celeste's wedding, Dad's failed businesses. What exactly did you give me besides contempt? Silence. Long and heavy. We're stuck in Paris, she finally said, voice small. The hotel wants payment. We can't eat. We can't. You have credit cards in your own names, don't you? Use those. They're maxed out. You know that. I did know that. I'd bailed them out on those cards twice before. Sounds like a personal problem. Lucian Frost, you listen to me. Dad's voice now, having grabbed the phone. His alpha male tone, the one he used when he wanted to remind everyone he was in charge. This childish tantrum ends now. You will restore access to that account, or I swear. You'll what? I interrupted, my voice ice. Report me for protecting my own money? Sue me with lawyers you can't afford? Disown the son you already treat like garbage. You ungrateful. I hung up, blocked the number, then blocked Celeste's, then her husband's. Every connection severed with a tap of my finger. The house felt quieter after that. Peaceful. Like I'd been living with background noise I didn't notice until it stopped. Around noon, my lawyer called. They're trying to file complaints, Dorian said, sounding amused. The bank, the credit bureaus, your parents are claiming fraud and identity theft. Will it work? Not even slightly. Every document proves you're the primary account holder and sole contributor. If anything, their complaints are strengthening your case. The bank's already opened an investigation into the unauthorized withdrawal. I smiled.
Good.
Lucian, I have to ask, how far are you planning to take this? I looked out my window at the city below, at people living their lives, free from family members who saw them as resources instead of humans. As far as it takes for them to understand, I'm done being their safety net. That's pretty far, Dorian said quietly. Yeah, I agreed. It is. That afternoon, I got one more message from a number I didn't recognize. Probably Celeste borrowing someone's phone. It said, "You're destroying this family. When we get home, you'll regret this. We'll never forgive you." I typed back, "I'm counting on it." Sometimes the people who hurt you most are the ones who never thought you'd fight back. What happens when this family finally comes home? You won't believe what Lucian has waiting for them. The legal machinery moved faster than I expected. Within 72 hours of my fraud reports, the bank's investigation team contacted me directly. A woman named Patricia, all business, walked me through their findings over a conference call that felt surreal in its efficiency. "Mr. Frost, we've reviewed the account activity. The withdrawal pattern is consistent with unauthorized access. We're freezing the account pending resolution and issuing formal notices to all parties involved." What does that mean exactly? I asked, though Dorian had already explained it twice. It means anyone who accessed those funds will need to provide documentation proving authorization. Without it, they could face charges for theft from a joint account holder. It's unusual, but your paper trail is exceptionally thorough. Exceptionally thorough. Months of paranoid preparation paying off in ways I'd hardly dared hope. "There's more," Patricia continued. "The credit bureaus have flagged unusual activity on accounts connected to your family members. They're requesting verification on several recent charges. Large purchases, cash advances. It appears they've been living significantly beyond their means." I felt something twist in my chest. Not quite sympathy, but close. How bad is it? Combined debt across 3 people? North of $90,000. And that's just what we can see. 90,000. While I'd been their safety net, they'd been digging a hole so deep they'd need a miracle to climb out. And I'd been that miracle over and over until I finally stopped. My phone buzzed during the call, another blocked number. I ignored it. They were probably calling from hotel phones now, airport kiosks, borrowed cells from sympathetic strangers. Each call more desperate than the last. When I hung up with Patricia, I found myself standing at my window, looking at nothing. The satisfaction I'd expected felt hollow somehow. Not because I regretted what I'd done, but because it was finally sinking in what this meant. My family was imploding. The protective walls they'd built with my money were crumbling. And I was the one holding the sledgehammer. Dorian called that evening. They've retained a lawyer. Some bargain attorney from a strip mall firm. He's already threatening to sue you for emotional distress and financial abuse. I almost laughed. Can they do that? They can try. Won't go anywhere. The documentation is airtight and, honestly, their lawyer knows it. This is posturing. They're hoping you'll settle to avoid hassle. I won't. I know. That's why I like you.
He paused.
Lucian, they're going to come home eventually. Probably broke. Definitely angry. You should prepare for that. I had been preparing. Not with lawyers or documents this time, but with something harder. The emotional fortitude to stand firm when they showed up at my door with tears and accusations and the full weight of family guilt bearing down. I'm ready, I told him. And, surprisingly, I meant it. The next morning, I got an email from Celeste. Not a text, an actual email, long and rambling and desperate in ways that would have broken me a month ago.
She talked about family bonds.
About forgiveness. About how Mom was having panic attacks in the hotel room and Dad wasn't sleeping. About how they'd made a mistake, but surely I understood they never meant to hurt me. About how we could work this out if I just give them one more chance. One more chance. Like the 1,000 chances before it that they'd burned through without a second thought. I read it twice, then archived it without responding. Words were cheap. They'd spent years proving that their words meant nothing. Now it was time for them to learn that neither did mine. The consequences were spreading like ripples in a pond. Their friends started calling me, family friends who'd known me since childhood, asking what was happening, trying to mediate. I told them the truth simply. My parents stole from me, and I protected myself. Some understood. Others called me cold, heartless, ungrateful. I blocked those numbers too. Anyone who thought theft deserved understanding wasn't someone I needed in my life. By the end of the week, I heard through the grapevine that they'd booked return flights using money borrowed from Celeste's in-laws. The Paris trip cut short. The dream vacation turned nightmare. They'd be home in 3 days. I spent those 3 days reinforcing every boundary I'd built. Changed my locks. Installed a security camera at my door. Drafted a formal cease and desist letter with Dorian's help. Prepared myself mentally for the storm that was coming. Because they would come. Angry, humiliated, desperate. And I would stand firm, unmoved, unbreakable. The invisible sun they'd ignored for years was about to become impossible to overlook. When you finally stand up to family who's abused your kindness, there's no going back. What happens when they come home? The confrontation is about to explode. They landed on a Tuesday. I know because my aunt called to warn me, one of the few family members who'd quietly supported my decision, though she'd never say it out loud at gatherings. They're heading to your place, she said quietly. Your mother is. Well, she's not in a good state. Just be prepared. I thanked her and hung up, then sat in my living room waiting. My apartment had never felt safer, more mine. Every piece of furniture I'd bought myself. Every wall I'd painted. Every comfort earned through work they dismissed as office stuff, while treating me like their personal bank. The buzzer rang at 4:37 p.m. I didn't answer. It rang again. And again. Then my phone started calls from numbers I didn't recognize, probably borrowed phones. I ignored them all. Finally, a text from Celeste. We know you're home. We're not leaving until you talk to us. I walked to my window and looked down. 3 floors below, my parents and sister stood on the sidewalk, looking up like protesters at a government building. Dad's face was red even from this distance. Mom was crying. Celeste kept gesturing angrily at her phone. I watched them for 5 minutes, feeling nothing but a strange detachment. These people had shaped my entire life, and now they felt like strangers. Strangers who'd stolen from me. My phone rang again, this time my building manager. Mr. Frost, there are people in the lobby claiming to be your family. They're causing a disturbance. Should I call security? Yes, I said simply. They're trespassing. 20 minutes later, they were gone, escorted out by building security. But the calls continued. The messages. The emails. A tsunami of guilt and anger and desperation that would have drowned the old me. But I wasn't the old me anymore. That Lucian had died somewhere between Paris and now, replaced by someone harder, colder, more certain. The next day, Mom showed up at my office. I don't know how she got past reception, but there she was in the lobby when I came back from lunch, looking small and broken in a way that tugged at something deep in my chest. "Please," she said when she saw me. Just that one word, eyes red and swollen. "Please, Lucian. We need to talk." People were staring. My coworkers, the receptionist, random visitors. I felt my face heat with embarrassment and anger. She brought this circus to my workplace, the one place I'd always been respected, valued, seen. "You need to leave," I said quietly. "I'm your mother. You're someone who stole from me and laughed about it. Now leave before I have you removed." Her face crumbled. "We're losing everything. The house, the cars, everything. If you don't help us." "Not my problem." The words came out flat, final. "You built your life on my back. Now figure it out yourself." She opened her mouth to argue, but security was already approaching. I turned and walked to the elevator, not looking back, even when I heard her sobbing echo through the marble lobby. That night, Celeste sent a video message. It showed Mom in their parents' house, surrounded by boxes, crying into her hands while Dad stared blankly at paperwork. The caption, "This is what you've done. Are you happy now?" I watched it once, then deleted it. They wanted me to feel guilty for protecting myself from their theft. They wanted me to believe their consequences were my fault. Classic manipulation, and I was finally immune to it. The truth settled over me like a blanket. I hadn't destroyed this family. They destroyed themselves years ago by treating me like a resource instead of a person. I just stopped enabling their destruction. And for the first time in my adult life, I felt something close to peace. Not happiness exactly, but the absence of the constant anxiety that had shadowed me for years. The freedom of knowing I owed them nothing. The relief of boundaries finally, firmly in place. They kept trying for another week, calls, visits, messages through relatives. Each attempt more desperate, more angry, more willing to say anything to crack my resolve. But I'd spent years bending to their will. Now I was steel, and they were breaking against me. Breaking free from toxic family isn't cruel, it's survival. But the aftermath is just beginning, and what Lucian discovers next will shock you. 3 weeks after they returned from Paris, my parents' house went into foreclosure. I heard about it through the family grapevine, whispers and shocked phone calls. Everyone asking if I knew, if I could help, if I planned to do something. I didn't. For the first time in 8 years, their crisis wasn't mine to solve. Celeste tried one more time, showing up at my gym on a Saturday morning. She cornered me by the weights, looking exhausted and desperate in ways that would have wrecked me months ago. "They're losing everything, Lucian. Everything. And you're just going to stand there and let it happen?" I set down my dumbbells. I didn't empty their savings. I didn't max out their credit cards. I didn't build a lifestyle they couldn't afford. They did that. All I did was stop being their ATM. "You're our brother. Family helps family. Funny how family only matters when you need something." I picked up my weights again. Where was family when I worked 80-hour weeks to pay your wedding bills? When I skipped meals to cover Dad's failed businesses? When I spent Christmas alone because nobody bothered to invite me? She flinched. "That's not fair." "No, what's not fair is spending 8 years being invisible until you needed money. What's not fair is stealing from me and laughing about it. What's not fair is expecting me to save you after you treated me like garbage." "We never," she started, but the lie died in her throat. Even she couldn't pretend anymore. I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and saw a stranger. Someone who'd benefited from my sacrifice without ever acknowledging it. Someone who'd watched our parents dismiss me and said nothing. Someone who'd joined in the mockery because it was easier than standing up for me. "You made your choices," I said quietly. "Now live with them." She left crying, and I finished my workout, feeling lighter than I had in years. The social fallout was intense. Half the family thought I was a monster. The other half quietly admitted they'd seen this coming. Holiday invitations stopped. Family group chats went silent. Relatives I barely knew felt entitled to lecture me about forgiveness and family values. I blocked them all and built a new life from the pieces that remained. Started seeing a therapist who helped me understand how deep the manipulation had gone. Joined social groups where people valued me for who I was, not what I could provide. Made friends who actually remembered my birthday. One evening, about a month after the gym confrontation, Dorian called with news. Your parents filed for bankruptcy. It's going through. And Lucian? They listed you as a creditor for the money they took from the joint account. I laughed, actually laughed. Are they serious? Dead serious. They're claiming you loaned them the money, and now they can't pay it back. It's creative. Stupid, but creative. Will it affect me? Not even slightly. But it shows their mindset. Even now, even after everything, they think you exist to solve their problems. After we hung up, I sat on my balcony watching the city lights. Somewhere out there, my parents were probably raging about how I'd ruined them, destroyed the family, abandoned them in their time of need. They'd probably never understand that they'd ruined themselves years ago. And honestly, I didn't need them to understand. Their awareness, their approval, their love, none of it mattered anymore. I'd spent too many years begging for scraps of affection from people incapable of giving it. I pulled out my phone and deleted every family photo from my gallery. Every text thread. Every email. It felt like shedding weight I'd carried so long I'd forgotten it wasn't part of me. The invisible son was gone. In his place was someone who'd learned the hardest lesson life offers. Sometimes the people who hurt you most are the ones who gave you life. And sometimes, the only way to survive is to walk away and never look back. I slept well that night. No nightmares. No guilt. Just the peaceful exhaustion of someone who'd fought a war and finally won. Cutting off toxic family sounds easy until you do it. But Lucian's journey isn't over. The final chapter reveals what happens when you truly reclaim your life. 6 months after Paris, I barely recognized my life. The constant dread was gone, replaced by something I'd forgotten existed: actual joy. Simple things felt revolutionary. Waking up without checking my phone for family emergencies, eating dinner without calculating how much I could spare for someone else's crisis, making plans without the background anxiety of being needed somewhere by someone for something. My bank account grew steadily for the first time in years. Not because I was making more, but because I wasn't hemorrhaging money into a bottomless pit of other people's bad decisions. I bought things I denied myself: a new laptop, a gym membership, a weekend trip to the coast, just because I could. The freedom was intoxicating and terrifying in equal measure. I'd built my identity around being useful, needed, essential. Without that role, who was I? Therapy helped. Dr. Martinez was patient while I worked through layers of conditioning and manipulation I hadn't even recognized. You are taught that love equals sacrifice, she said during one session. That your worth was measured in dollars and doormat behavior. Unlearning that takes time. Time I finally had. Time that wasn't being stolen by family drama and financial emergencies that were somehow always urgent enough to need my money, but never urgent enough to change their behavior. I heard updates occasionally through the grapevine. My parents moved into a smaller apartment. Celeste and her husband were struggling. Dad took a job he'd previously considered beneath him. Mom stopped posting on social media entirely. Some relatives expected me to feel guilty. A few tried to guilt me directly. They're your parents. They're suffering. How can you live with yourself? Easy. I lived with myself by remembering the mockery, the theft, the years of being invisible. I lived with myself by recognizing that their suffering was the natural consequence of their choices, not my responsibility to fix. One day, I ran into an old family friend at a coffee shop. Mrs. Henderson, who'd known me since childhood. She looked at me sadly and said, "Your mother cries about you constantly. Says she doesn't understand what she did wrong." I stirred my coffee slowly. She stole from me, mocked me for it, then expected me to apologize for protecting myself. If she truly doesn't understand what she did wrong, that's the problem right there. Mrs. Henderson nodded slowly. You know, I watched you grow up. Watched you give and give while they took and took. I probably should have said something years ago. Why didn't you? Because it wasn't my place. But maybe it should have been. Maybe someone should have told you that you didn't owe them your entire life just because they gave you birth.
She squeezed my hand.
For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. Hard thing, but right. That conversation stayed with me for days. All those people who'd watched my family bleed me dry, who'd said nothing, who now wanted to lecture me about forgiveness. Their silence had enabled the abuse. Their comfort with the status quo had kept me trapped. I started writing. Not for publication, just for me. Pages and pages of everything I'd never said, every moment I'd swallowed my hurt, every time I'd chosen peace over standing up for myself. The words poured out like poison being drawn from a wound. And slowly, painfully, I healed. Not completely, some scars don't fade. But enough to breathe without the constant weight of family obligation crushing my chest. Enough to imagine a future where I wasn't defined by their needs or their neglect. I made new traditions. Thanksgiving with friends who chose each other rather than being bound by blood. Christmas volunteering at a shelter, finding meaning in helping people who appreciated it rather than demanded it. New Year's alone in my apartment, toasting to a year free from their chaos. The invisible son had become visible to himself. And that, I realized, was the only visibility that mattered. Not their recognition. Not their approval. Just my own acceptance that I was worthy of respect, boundaries, and a life not spent servicing people who saw me as a resource. It was the quietest revolution, the kind that happens inside a person where no one else can see. But it changed everything. I changed everything. And for the first time in my adult life, I was proud of who I was becoming. Sometimes winning means walking away. But every ending is a beginning, and what Lucian builds next is the ultimate revenge, a life they can't touch. A year after that Paris text, I sat in my new apartment, bigger, brighter, mine in ways the old one never was, looking at a message on my phone. An unknown number, but I'd learned to be cautious about blocking everything. This is your father. Your mother is in the hospital. Heart problems. She's asking for you. I stared at those words for a long time. This was the moment they'd probably been waiting for, the crisis big enough to crack my resolve. The guilt bomb designed to explode the boundaries I'd built. I called the hospital directly, asked for her condition. Stable, they said. Not critical. She'd had a scare, but she was okay. I thanked them and hung up, without leaving a message. Then I texted back, I hope she recovers. Take care. No visit. No rush to her bedside. No crumbling of my carefully constructed walls. Just a simple acknowledgement that I wasn't heartless, but I also wasn't available to be manipulated anymore. The angry messages came fast after that. How dare I? What kind of son? She could have died. I'd regret this forever. But I didn't regret it. I'd learned the difference between empathy and enabling. I could hope she recovered without letting them weaponize her health against my boundaries. I could care from a distance without sacrificing the peace I'd fought so hard to claim. My therapist called it growth. I called it survival. Either way, I wasn't going back. Months passed. Seasons changed. Life continued with a normalcy that felt almost surreal. I got a promotion at work, one I would have missed years ago because I'd been too busy solving family crises to focus on my career. Started dating someone who saw me, really saw me, without needing anything except my presence. When she asked about my family, I told her the truth simply. We're not in contact.
They weren't good for me.
She nodded, didn't push, didn't judge. That must have been hard. It was. But not as hard as staying would have been. That was the truth I'd learned through fire. Leaving toxic family is brutal. It feels like amputating a limb. But sometimes amputation saves your life, and the phantom pain eventually fades into relief that you survived. I never got the apology I probably deserved. No acknowledgement of what they'd done. No understanding of why I'd left. They probably told everyone I was the villain, the ungrateful son who abandoned his family in their time of need. And honestly, I was okay with that. Their narrative didn't define me anymore. Their approval or lack of it didn't determine my worth. I'd taken back something they'd stolen gradually over years. My sense of self, my right to boundaries, My understanding that I deserved better than crumbs of affection in exchange for open wallet access. Standing in my apartment one evening, I realized something profound. I'd won. Not by destroying them, though they'd certainly destroyed themselves, but by refusing to go down with them. By choosing myself after years of choosing everyone else first. The joint account was closed now. The legal matters settled. The connections severed. In their place, I'd built something infinitely more valuable, a life free from the constant drain of people who loved what I could provide more than who I was. Some people say blood is thicker than water. But I learned the full quote. The blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. The family you choose, the bonds you forge through mutual respect and genuine care, those matter more than shared DNA and childhood history. I chose myself. And in doing so, I finally found the family I'd been searching for all along, people who valued me, celebrated me, saw me. Not as a solution or a safety net, but as a person worthy of love without conditions. That text about Paris changed everything. It forced a confrontation I'd been avoiding for years. It shattered the illusion that family automatically meant love. And it freed me to build something better from the ashes of what had been. I never heard from them again after that hospital message. Maybe they finally understood. Maybe they just moved on to another source of support. Either way, their absence felt like the final piece of healing I'd needed. The invisible sun was gone. In his place stood someone visible, valued, and finally blessedly free. Thank you for joining Lucian's journey from invisible to invincible. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We share powerful stories like this every week about people who found their strength when life pushed them too far. Drop a comment about your own experiences with setting boundaries or toxic relationships. Your story might inspire someone else who needs to hear they're not alone. Share this video with anyone who needs permission to choose themselves. Remember, you're not cruel for having boundaries. You're not selfish for protecting your peace. You're not obligated to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. See you in the next story, and remember, you're part of this family now.